We've covered a lot in our time working in R. We've learned the ins and outs of R and RStudio, including how to analyze and visualize your data. Now, you'll learn how to document and report your work using R Markdown. R Markdown is a file format for making dynamic documents with R. You can use an R Markdown file as a code notebook to save, organize, and document your analysis using code chunks, comments, and other features. When you finish your data cleaning and exploration, you can create a report in R Markdown to summarize your findings for stakeholders. The core of the work we do in my department involves analytics. When my team started getting bigger, we noticed we didn't have a shared language for data analysis. So, there was an effort for everyone to learn R so we could collaborate more easily. Now, everyone speaks the same programming language. We can review each other's code, which has led to more consistency and collaboration, and better analysis. R Markdown reports are great for sharing knowledge. These reports let anyone, from a small group of online users to a large company, share and reproduce analysis. In this course, we'll start with an overview of R Markdown, and then we'll learn how to install R Markdown in RStudio. After that, we'll check out how to create an R Markdown document. We'll also explore the structure and components of the document, so you'll have an idea of how to use them to record and report your analysis. Next, we'll show you how to insert and edit pieces of code called chunks into your document. And finally, we'll check out the process of exporting your documentation. It's always good to have a report of the analysis you've done, both for yourself and your stakeholders. After that, we'll wrap up our time with R. Of course, your time with R can keep going, and you can keep practicing. I hope you'll put R to good use in your future job as a data analyst too. It's a huge advantage in your career. Speaking of your career, when you've completed everything in the R program, you'll have the chance to add to or start building your portfolio by completing a case study. This is a great way to showcase all the skills you've learned so far and stand out to future employers. We'll talk more about this project later. In the meantime, let's get back into the R groove. As a data analyst, you'll need to refer to your analysis at a moment's notice. You might need to share it with your fellow team members, or a stakeholder might ask about one of your conclusions. Documenting your work makes it easy to quickly share your analysis with anyone. And that's where R Markdown comes in. Earlier, we learned that R Markdown is a file format for making dynamic documents with R. R Markdown lets you create a record of your analysis and conclusions in a document. It ties together your code and your report so you can share every step of your analysis. And the best part is, you don't even have to leave RStudio to do this. This document will help stakeholders and team members understand what you did in your analysis to reach your conclusions. Their feedback will also help you improve your analysis. R Markdown documents are written in Markdown. Markdown is a syntax for formatting plain text files. Using Markdown makes it easier to write and format text in your document. Markdown is also easy to read and to learn. For example, if you want to italicize a word or phrase in Markdown, just add a single underscore or asterisk right before and after the word. When you create a report of the document, the Markdown formatting's no longer visible, just the word or phrase in italics. We'll show you more formatting options soon, but they're all similar to this example. Basically, they're simple enough to let you focus on descriptions and explanations of your analysis without having to think too much about how to format them. Besides text, R Markdown also includes an interactive option called an R notebook that lets users run your code and show the graphs and charts that visualize the code. Any R Markdown document can be used as a notebook. This creates a clear overall picture of your analysis and conclusions. R Markdown lets you convert your files into lots of different formats too. You can create HTML, PDF, and Word documents, or you can convert to a slide presentation or dashboard. Having these options makes it easy to share the same analysis in a variety of ways, depending on your audience. The Markdown language was originally designed for HTML output. HTML is the set of markup symbols and codes used to create a web page. R Markdown has the most available features for this format, but you can get good results in any of the formats. While R Markdown is a great way to record and share your analysis, there are other options too. Notebooks like Jupyter, Kaggle, and Google Colab do a lot of the same things as an R Markdown notebook, including the interactive elements. You'll read more about these options in a little bit. Coming up, we'll create an R Markdown document. You'll get to see this effective analysis tool in action. Exploring the different tools available for analysis is one of the more fun parts of being a data analyst. By now, you've had the chance to try out tools like spreadsheets, BigQuery or other SQL tools, and Tableau. Now, we'll check out a tool you can use in RStudio, R Markdown. As a reminder, R Markdown is a great tool for documenting your analysis at any stage, but especially when you've completed a project. Let's open up RStudio and get started with R Markdown. Feel free to follow along with the video and try it out on your own later. Or go ahead and join us now in your own RStudio account. We'll first install the R Markdown package by using our install packages function and R Markdown in parentheses. As a reminder, installing packages can take some time. Bright red text may show up in your console as it installs. That's all perfectly normal. Okay, let's open up a new R Markdown or RMD file using the File menu. If you're working along with us and you're prompted to do install packages that you'll need to open your file, go ahead and click Yes. Right away, you might notice some of the outputs available in R Markdown. For now, we'll use the default HTML and document options. The other output options will also be available later. We'll add a file name and author and then open our file. Next, we'll save it so we can use it later. So now we have an RMD file filled with metadata at the top and chunks of code in the gray sections. There's text in between for explaining the code and adding comments on your analysis and conclusions. This R Markdown documents in its original format. It's definitely useful and can be edited and added to, but if we want to produce a report containing all text, code, and results, we need to click the Knit button. Now we've got the report. It's an HTML file that you can share with others. Let's compare the original .rmd file with the HTML report. You can tell that the text has been transformed into a more viewer-friendly format. Also, the code chunks have all been run, and we now have their output, both the columns of data and the plot from an analysis on the CARS dataset. The report's clear and formatted in a way that's easy to follow and understand. We could share it with stakeholders, even if they've got no experience in R. R Markdown files are definitely an effective way to complete the data analysis process. You can start your analysis in R and create a report complete with code and visualizations all in the same workspace. Coming up, we'll show you more examples of how to use R Markdown to make your documentation even more effective. Earlier, we showed you how to get started using R Markdown. We created a Markdown document called an RMD file, which is super useful for making and saving a final report that summarizes your data exploration and analysis findings. In this video, we'll check out the structure of the text in an RMD file and how you could format it to better organize and emphasize your findings. Let's go into RStudio and open the file we saved earlier called R Markdown Intro. If you're working along with us and don't have a file saved, you can open up a new R Markdown or RMD file using the File menu. If you're prompted to install packages, go ahead and click Yes. Click OK to open with the default options and then save your file. Now, let's dig deeper into this file. We'll start at the top. This is the YAML header section. YAML is a language for data that translates it so it's readable. Fun fact, YAML originally stood for Yet Another Markup Language. This section is called out using 3 dashes on the first and last lines. This syntax automatically creates the YAML header section when it's used in an RMD file. In an RMD file, this section's basically for metadata, or the data about the data in the rest of the file. The title, author, date, and file type of an output are automatically included when you create a new file. There's lots of different functions and formatting options in this section. For now, just make sure you have at least the 4 details we've got in our file now. You can use the template that appears when you open the file and just edit over it, or you can start from scratch using the 3 dashes to create the YAML section and the rest of the contents in the file. We'll cover these steps over the next few videos and in the other program resources. Next, let's check out the text in the white areas of our file. Think of the text as a way to comment on and explain your code and analysis and any visualizations you're including. You can format the text to include links, ordered lists, equations, and more. The text is formatted using Markdown, the syntax we introduced earlier. We've included a reading that shows you all of the ways to format text, as well as lots of other great Markdown tips and tricks. You'll also learn some more formatting examples in the next video. For now, let's try some examples that are in this file. On line 12, there's 2 hashtags and a space before the words R Markdown. Hashtags are used for headers. The more hashtags, the smaller the header. The space is important as well. Otherwise, RStudio won't recognize that this is a header. Let's knit our file again. There's the R Markdown header in the HTML file. If we add 2 more hashtags in the .rmd file and click knit once again, the output changes. The header's now smaller. We'll change it back because the original format made sense. Since this header is introducing information about R Markdown that comes in the next 2 paragraphs, we want to emphasize it. In the first paragraph of this section, there's a brief summary of Markdown. There's a link in the text, and it's formatted using angle brackets. Using these brackets results in a clickable link in the output. That's a handy feature if you want to refer to any helpful links or include them as sources for your analysis. In the next paragraph, knit is set off with 2 asterisks on either side of the word. This bolds the word. Using 1 asterisk on either side would instead italicize the word. Let's scroll down to the last paragraph. Here we've got some inline code, which can be inserted directly into the text of a .rmd file. The code appears in a gray box, like the code chunks we'll talk about soon. Using inline code like this lets you refer to the code directly as you explain it. Let's knit our file one more time. All the formatting works together to make a well-designed, readable file that's easy to share with stakeholders and team members. That's it for now, but there's lots more to learn about creating your own reports. We've learned a lot about R Markdown, or RMD, files, and how they can be formatted and converted into reports for stakeholders. We've also explored the YAML header and its comments, descriptions, and explanations for the analysis shown in the report. Now comes the heart of an RMD file, the code. Code added to a .rmd file is usually called a code chunk. We've shown you these code chunks in some of the RStudio sessions we've been running, and you may have noticed code chunks if you've been practicing along with us. Now, we'll show you what they're all about. Earlier, we worked with the Palmer Penguins dataset. We ran some code to analyze the data and create visualizations. After this step, we'd probably want to set up a practice report with notes about our analysis. We'll do that here and incorporate some code and visuals. Let's start by opening up RStudio and then the script with our programming, the ggplot_hook file. You can follow along using the link in the previous reading. We could share this file directly with others, but it's not very effective. It's hard to read and doesn't always include any takeaways. So we'll create a new .rmd file instead. We'll add a title and author. Now we have 2 tabs in our script pane. We can toggle between them just like with browser tabs. We'll save our new .rmd file. This file's in the template format, so we'll delete everything except the header section and start our own. We already set up the header section, so we don't need to make any changes there. Instead of deleting, we could make edits section by section, adding our own comments and code along the way. But deleting the file contents gives us a blank space to work in and helps us avoid potential errors from mixing our own comments and code with the pre-existing ones in the template. Before we add any code, we want to describe its purpose. The first code chunk will set up our R environment by loading our packages using the library function. So on a new line, we'll type 2 hashtags to format a header for this section, followed by the header text, setting up my environment. Then we'll add a note about the code. We've added apostrophes before and after Tidyverse and Palmer Penguins because they're the names of the packages, which makes them part of the actual code. And now we'll add our code. RStudio has a handy code menu that we can use to insert a code chunk. There's also a button in our script pane that lets us add code chunks. This creates a gray section in our file and chunk delimiters. A delimiter is a character that indicates the beginning or end of a data item. You could also type these delimiters directly in the file. 3 backticks followed by an R in braces to begin the code chunk and 3 backticks to end it. Or you could use the keyboard shortcuts Control plus Alt plus I on a PC or Chromebook and Command plus Option plus I on a Mac. Since we're in RStudio, the code menu works just fine. Inside the first brace, we'll label our code chunk. After the R, we'll add a space and then type loading packages. This adds another layer to our organization. We can now easily find this code chunk and its label using the Contents menu at the bottom of our script pane. Next, between our delimiters, we'll add our first code chunk, which we use to load our 2 packages. Even if they're already loaded, loading them again makes sure that our packages will be updated to the latest version. We can type starting on the line after the first delimiter. But since we also have our programming file available, we'll copy and paste from there. Now we can run our code right in the file to check it for errors. And there's the code output. We can also change our code chunk options. There's options for changing the output and for turning off warnings and messages. These are useful for when you're ready to create a final report for stakeholders. You'll have control over what you'll show them in the report. For example, if you get warnings with your output that don't impact your findings, you can turn off the warnings for stakeholders. Now let's check out this report in its completed form. We'll click the Knit button to convert our report to an HTML document. It's got our notes and comments to help us as we keep learning. It's also got code chunks from our previous analysis and output, like visuals. So the code chunks are the key to making this report a good learning tool and eventually a document worth presenting to stakeholders. When you have code embedded in a file and can show its output, you can provide evidence for your findings and share your sources. And if you need more evidence for how R Markdown can help you document your analysis, we've got it coming next. One of the most powerful things about an R Markdown file is that you can convert it to different output types to create shareable reports. We've been focusing on HTML documents, but there are other options we can explore. Let's start by opening our earlier report. We created this report as a learning document to help you think through your code and analysis. For this video, imagine it's a report you need to share with stakeholders. The file is currently in the .rmd format, but as we've shown, it can be converted using the Knit button. The Knit drop-down menu includes 3 main options: HTML, PDF, and a Word document. You can use Knit to convert your file to any of these types whenever you want, but it's good practice to wait to convert to a PDF or Word doc. Instead, stick with HTML while you're working. HTML doesn't have page breaks, so you can focus on generating content for your report and not its appearance. The Knit button isn't the only option for converting your file. The YAML can be edited to change your metadata or incorporate more details. For example, we'll change our output in this file to PDF. When we click the Knit button to render the file and run the code, the output's in a PDF format. so you know how changing the metadata can have an effect on the whole report. And if you need to create a certain type of document over and over, or if you want to customize the appearance of your final report, you can create a template. If it's a monthly or annual report that you're creating for stakeholders, you can just run one line of code to update your data, and your report's ready. We won't cover creating a template here, but it's something you might want to learn more about on your own as you get more experience in R. We've now explored a big part of R Markdown and R documentation. We've explained what R Markdown is and how to use it in RStudio to create .rmd files. We've checked out the structure of these files and how you can format them to make reports. We've shown you what code chunks are and how to include them in your documentation. And we've shown you how to take all of that analysis, plus your explanation of that analysis, and transform it from a .rmd file into a report that you can use as a learning document or share with stakeholders.